Welcome back to season 5 of Life Curious Women. I am so excited that you're here. We are back with another interview episode this week, and I'm very pumped to get into it. Last week, we talked to Sam Bale, who's the founder of Third Place Bar, and we talked all about redefining connection, rewriting what it means to have fun without alcohol. And this week, we're just keeping that bold, honest energy going with a woman who has built her entire career around meaningful conversations. And I can't wait to tell you more. But before we do, I want to give you a few updates in case you've missed the past couple of episodes. I gave a massive update on episode 1 of this season, so go back and listen to all of the revelations, changes that happened over the last couple of months between season 4 to season 5 and how we are completely turning everything on its head. And we are going into this next phase of Life Curious Women, super bold, super raw, super honest. And I am really, really excited to get into all of it. And some really exciting logistical updates. We now have a YouTube channel, so you can go and watch this episode on YouTube if you aren't already watching us on YouTube. And I'm really excited about that because that's been something I've really wanted for a while. And so it's nice to finally be able to put it up on YouTube so that you can actually watch these episodes and get the full experience. And we also revamped our newsletter this fall. So that is something that I also have been really wanting to do. And I'm excited that we finally rolled it out. But we are going to be sending right to your inbox, headlines that you've missed that week that are really important to what we think the community is, wanting to hear about. We also are going to be sharing our top women's events every week in New York City. So if you're looking to get out there, meet more people, network, all of the things, that's going to be an incredible resource for you. We're also obviously going to be sharing updates for Life Curious Women and anything that we're going to be putting out in the next couple of months. I'm excited to keep growing what we offer to you and the resources that we provide. So please stay tuned for that. So yeah, if you're not subscribed to the newsletter, if you're not subscribed to this podcast, the YouTube, all the things, go subscribe on YouTube, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the newsletter. All of that will be in our show notes. And I'm excited that you're here. And I'm excited to have Gaby Ulloa on the podcast this episode. So Gaby is a Cuban-American journalist, writer, and on-camera host whose work has been featured in the New York Times, Architectural Digest, Refinery 29, Remezcla, New York Magazine, the list goes on and on. She has interviewed some of our biggest cultural voices, and she's the creator and host of Irregardless, a beautifully produced interview show that highlights the stories shaping culture right now. In this conversation, Gaby and I talk about identity, creative reinvention, the courage to take a bet on yourself when everyone else expects you to sort of follow a traditional path. We unpack what it means to follow your voice as a Latina woman in media, how to create your own opportunities, and the ongoing dance between vulnerability, boundaries, and ambition when you live so much of your life online and in the public. So this one is extremely rich. It's the kind of conversation that reminds you that purpose evolves and that you can hold depth and joy at the same time, and that building a meaningful career doesn't have to mean sacrificing who you are or what you value. So yeah, I'm very excited for you guys to listen wherever you're tuning in. Take a breath, settle in, and let's get into it. Hello, Gaby. Thank you for joining me here on Life Curious Women. I'm very excited to dive in. I know I told you a little bit before, but I'm a really big fan of all of the things that you're doing. I came across your podcast a couple of months ago, and then I kind of went down the rabbit hole and started following you, and then saw your Substack, and I'm like, oh my God, I love everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
So I'm so excited to talk to you and kind of hear a little bit more about your origins and your story and all the things. But welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to dive in. I love what you're doing, so I'm really happy to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk to you. So for starters, I like to dive in and hear from your perspective. If you can share a little bit about who you are with our audience.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Gabby. I am originally from Miami, Cuban parents. I now live in LA, and I'm a journalist, I'm a writer, and I'm an on-camera host. Most recently, I launched my own show, which is exciting. It's called
Yeah.
Irregardless, which like if anyone's from Miami, I'm like, you understand the name. But like you mentioned, I also have my Substack and I create content on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. And I think honestly, like anything that I'm doing, no matter what type of storytelling it is, my goal is really just for people to expand their perceptions of what's possible for them and be able to dream a little bit bigger and not feel so alone in the process. Um, so that's kind of like the through line for everything that I do. But yeah, I moderate and host conversations and I do panels, summits, all that sort of fun stuff. And it's been a wild ride. I actually just had I don't know exactly what the date it was, but this is now 5 years, October, that I've been self-employed. So this is like, we're
Wow.
having a moment right now.
Congratulations. That is
Thank you.
huge, huge,
Thank you.
huge. That's amazing. And I totally see that with all of your content. And like, I think that's why I resonated so much with everything you share and like the stories you tell and everything. Obviously, we're both Latina, so there's
Yeah.
obviously the common thread there. But I definitely got that from, especially like my entryway was your podcast, and I was like, oh my God, like I love listening to people in the industry, especially women of color.
Yeah.
And so to be able to tune into your podcast and hear from, women that are actors. I'm an actor as well, and hearing their stories and being able to be expanded in that way and
Mhm.
have, a window into like, okay, what are their journeys like? I feel that's sort of the reason I started my podcast too, is just like I feel like all of us need to be able to like see things in order for us to
Yes.
even imagine that it's possible for us.
Yes.
So what you're doing is so important because I think like that does encourage people to take the jump or take action on something or like, start the podcast or start the Substack or whatever it is. So, um,
100%.
yeah.
100%. Thank you for
Hmm.
saying that. I mean, look, there is no way that I'm doing what it is that I'm doing if it wasn't because I saw somebody doing something
Totally.
either exactly the same or in the same ballpark. I mean, even my career before I was self-employed, like I come from a very traditional editorial background. I worked at Condé Nast. I was the assistant
Yeah.
to editor-in-chief at Architectural Digest, and before then was interning and working in fashion and magazines. And that started because I mean, I had this love for writing from when I was a little kid
Yeah.
that I had no idea was the coping mechanism that I later, put two and two together that it was. But I had this love for writing. And then I remember I was probably like 12 when the Devil Wears Prada came out. And I remember watching it and being like, you can get paid to do this and also
Yes.
look amazing doing it. And like, this is so fun and interesting. I was like, I want that. I'm going to be Latina in a winter. Like, that's what I'm going to do. And having somebody like her, and then also having somebody like Oprah that I was always like, how can I marry these two situations
Exactly.
together?
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's like the super long Rolodex of everybody else that I've
Sure.
admired along the way. But it really was just like understanding that like, oh, there are options for what you can do for a living that meld the things that really make your heart sing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I think that's like the journey, right? And I feel like that's why I call this podcast Life Curious Women, because I feel like all of the women I get a chance to speak to have like forged their own paths. And
Yeah.
like, that's kind of the journey, right? Is like, okay, you like this thing, you like that thing. And like, how do you now like, I mean, we're now privileged enough where there's so many avenues to be able to kind of like
Mm-hmm.
mold and build our own like careers and visions and all the things. But it's so interesting. I want to like backtrack and hear a little bit about like those beginning stages, like when you were writing as a kid and all that kind of stuff. I know you mentioned a little bit that like it was sort of like a coping mechanism and all that stuff. Like tell me a little bit about that and like how did that vision then morph into being like, okay, I'm going to move to New York. I'm going to start doing all of these things.
Yeah. Okay. I'm like, how do I condense this into
Yeah.
like the Reader's Digest
I know
version?
that's a very
Because
like loaded question.
I am the most long-winded bitch on planet Earth. So I will
Oh no,
figure it out.
you're in the right place. You're in the right
Great.
place.
Great. I mean, so listen, like I said, when I was a kid, I was a dramatic child. And
Same.
I wasn't like, when we were all little, we had like the diary and it was like very Dear Diary kid vibes. But I very quickly, I feel like I graduated from that and I was like, this doesn't resonate with me, the whole like recapping of what's going on. And I think I probably started doing this in middle school. I would just have these like big feelings, whether it was like something with a boy or like something with a friend or like something in my family. And I would write these fucking novels. And it was always on my computer. Like I would do it on like a Word doc.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yes. I'd like would bring out the computer and I would do this whole Word doc and I would print it out and be like, I pray that nobody checks the family printer before I go grab it.
Yeah.
And it was like essentially like letters that I would never send. And it was just mind dumps. And fast forward, I'm then in high school. I'm a senior in high school. And I took this writing class. And it was the first sort of taste of taking like an academic creative writing class where it wasn't fiction at all. But essentially, again, I'm like, I'll try and condense this. But we basically got to have, it wasn't a pen pal because that's like not the right word for it. But basically we were in partnership with a women's prison in Florida. And they were taking a class, some of the women, and we were both given the same like syllabus. So we were all reading the same books. And then we would be given a prompt based off that book. And then we would respond to the prompt. And then we would trade with our like pen pal that was in the women's prison. And we were not allowed to talk about anything, about their crimes or anything like that. It was like strictly just meeting of the minds type of style. And what was so fascinating to me in that class was how much you could tell about somebody's lived experience through the words that they were using to answer a question that had nothing to do with them. And I think that was like the first inkling where I was like, this is a really powerful emotional outlet. And it was, like intense. And it was really cathartic for me. And I had a great relationship with that teacher. I feel like everybody has that like one teacher that like changed the course for them.
Totally.
Shout out Dr. Schoen. He was a remarkable teacher. And he was the first person that kind of looked at me and was like, you're a really talented writer. Like you should think about this. And I was like, I love magazines. I had like Vogue stuff all over my room. And I kind of put two and two together. Like I said, I was obsessed with The Devil Wears Prada. And I was like, okay, like I really want to explore what that could look like. And so I went off to college and I really wanted to major in journalism. And my mom was like, no. She was like, I am paying for your school, which was like a huge privilege to not have to graduate with any student debt. And her one deal with me was she was like, you have to study something that has to do with business. So I had to be a business minor.
Okay.
That was the deal. She was like, you can at least make it a minor, but you have to study something to do with business. And then she was like, and something, I don't know why she said this because journalism makes you well-rounded, but she was like, I want you to like not close off your options. So I ended up being a political science major and I went to school in DC. So that was like really interesting.
Okay.
But then in the summers, I started interning at magazines and things like that. And so then I was working at a fashion magazine one summer and I was like, okay, this is solidifying. Like I want to work in editorial. But even, fast forward to then me working at Architectural Digest, I was always trying to figure out the thing that made me tick as a writer. Like some people were incredibly talented fashion writers. And I was like, okay, I think I have good taste, but like, I don't really know if I'm like on it like that. Like there's people that are way better at this than me. And then same thing at AD. It was like, I love design and I love beautiful things, but for whenever I got the opportunity to interview somebody about their house, I was way more interested in the person living in the house than the paint color on the wall. And so the way that I would structure my questions was way more around like, what is it about you and your upbringing and who you are that made you choose that couch? Which might seem like a stupid question, but you'd be shocked the answers that you get out of people.
No, that makes sense to me. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm like thinking I sound insane, but that was sort of the moment that it clicked in my brain where I was like, oh, okay, like my beat or like my thing is people. Like I'm just interested in understanding humans and understanding myself more and having, more empathy for my friends and my loved ones and for the people around us that we have absolutely fucking nothing in common with. Like these are the types of stories that I want to tell. And now that's sort of bled into what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love that so much. And I feel like it all does tie in though. Like, it's like, yes, you did those things and all of that led to like now being like, okay, now I can like create my own sort of like hub of what I want to focus on. And like, it's just so cool to hear that, because I feel like all of us can relate to that journey of like, okay, I start here, and like have an idea, but like not really sure, not really clicking. And like to have the bravery to like continue to move forward through that and follow those instincts instead of like being like, oh, I'm too scared to like go down that path or continue to figure out what it is like love that.
I mean, sorry to cut you off, but
No,
I
no.
just like reflecting back now that I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
I think the reason that it took me so long, I mean, listen, I think when all of this clicked, I was probably 24. So like, God forbid, but like it took me, in our head so long to figure out like, oh, that's the way that I want to use my voice or whatever. Because I think I was very rigid about doing things that had already been done that made sense. I think coming from immigrant families, like we all relate to this idea of like, these are the steps that you follow in order to be successful. And the only way to be successful is to do XYZ thing. And I was already being crazy because I was going a creative route. But at least everybody could wrap their minds around, she's working for the best, like most legacy media company ever. It's corporate. Like it's corporate. And anyone that has worked somewhere like Condé Nast or Hearst will tell, like that is a corporate ass fucking environment.
Sure.
And so that made sense, right? But when I was going into fashion and then going into design, I think I was following, not design, because that's a whole different story, but fashion, I was really following like what I thought was cool. So what I thought other people that I thought were cool were doing. B, what I thought like, oh, okay, there's longevity again, like Anna Wintour, like I could do something like that and I could da-da-da-da-da. Like I was
Yeah.
really following what I thought other people would think is cool. And it really wasn't until I was like shutting out everybody else's voice of like, this is what you need to do to not only have sex, but to not only have a success. Success. I'm like, tell me.
And I mean, if sex is there, great.
Sex is part of the success plan. So
Exactly.
it's all intertwined. In order to have success, and like, not only do I need to have like, okay, this plan, but also like, what is going to give me the ego boost,
Yeah.
And finally getting to the root of like what it is that I wanted to do had to come from a space. It honestly came from doing a lot of fucking self-work and like doing really intense therapy stuff that I did when I was like 22 to really be able to hear my own voice, where I was like, oh, this is what we're like interested in. And then it's funny because the second that you actually start following the thing that not only are you like naturally curious about, but you're good at, that's when the doors just like open.
Totally. And I think like to your credit though, like it's hard to do that, right? Like it's hard to listen to ourselves and our intuition, because for most of our life, like we are being told from outside voices, like, this is what you should do. This is the direction. That's not really a job. Like, how do you do, like those are all like societal messages we're getting, not just from like outside society, but like your inner circle too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's confusing, right? Like it is confusing to be like, okay, what actually do I want to do? Like, and I think even like university settings, they don't really, not, that's like a really broad statement, but I feel like in my experience, it's, you still are kind of like being placed into like, well, what are you going to do with that? And what kind of boxes? And like, how does that match with it? Like, and like, you're not really like encouraged or like given the space to like explore a unique path that maybe doesn't fit into like an exact box, so like I get that feeling so much, because it took me so long too, like where like I grew up being an actor and like doing musical theater and all these things, and then I didn't get into acting school, and I was like so lost, and I like found my path, and I was like an English major, and I also like really fell into being like, wow, I never realized how much I love writing and all these things, and did women's and gender studies as well as a double major, and then like leaving, and I was like, I was so confused. Like I was like, I know I like deeply love acting and like the arts and what it does, and but then like I felt like it was like I didn't know how to like make a real impact. Like and I
Mm.
for some reason my brain it was like split. Whereas like if I choose to be an actor, like I'm not making a direct real impact on like, you know, women. And my whole thing was like advancing women's rights, especially women of color and all these things. And I was so confused, like graduating. And it took me kind of like a little bit of stumbling till I was like, no, no, no. Like I do want to be an actor and I can make an impact this way. And it's not separate, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And isn't it really interesting how I think we're really trained as women to think that anything that we want to do is somehow vapid, because it's for
mm,
me sitting on the other side here, listening to what you're saying, I'm like, it makes complete, how important is having actors that
yeah,
look like the whole
yes,
array?
yeah,
Because again, how we started this conversation, like you can't be what you don't see. So when
yeah.
you're saying you had this knowing that you wanted to help people and specifically women in this very important way, but you were like, oh, but that's a vapid way to get there. Like, no, it's an extremely important way to get there. And I relate to that a lot. Like it took me a long time to admit that I wanted to interview on camera because I thought I
Mm.
had this like this complejo in my brain of like,
Uh-huh.
she likes attention too much, or like this makes you vapid because you're just like you're seeking attention, it's about you. When it, yeah, sure, is it fun to be on set and feel pretty and be on camera
Yeah.
and look cute? Like fuck yeah, I like the attention, that's fun. But like that wasn't the guiding force there. And it's just interesting how it's so easy for us to diminish what we want to do just because it's not, like I fucking doubt that if you were having this conversation with a dude who was an actor, that he wouldn't sit here being like, my work
Yeah.
has changed lives. Like me,
100%. a hundred
I
percent.
am I am fixing the United States of America
A
one script at a time.
hundred. 100%. And when I was graduating, as I graduated college in 2016 was the election. So I was like,
Girl, I was in DC. I was in
yeah.
school during that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like I
Crazy
was like,
times.
I need to like, I can't, what am I doing? Like I
You're like,
can't
I
just
better
like
lock in.
be an artist. Like I have to like be a freaking
Yeah.
politician. Like I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, so like it's like, yeah, like this, that's so true. And I never even thought of it in that from that lens of it being like, oh, like, is it because of like this, like, this cultural or like, I don't know, societal construct that we're like putting ourselves in because we are raised, at like socialized as women to think like, okay, well, no, like all of our work has to be super meaningful and it can't be like, God forbid, fun or like,
Yeah.
like
God forbid I'm talking about a lip gloss. Like
right,
fucking
right, right, right,
yeah.
exactly, exactly. And it's like we're getting that message all the time, right? Like it's like when we talk about like astrology or this or that, and like suddenly that's so stupid that women like astrology or all these things, and I'm like, yeah, but for so long, and if you go so far back, like tons of like prominent businessmen were it's known that they followed astrology and all these things, but because women like it, then suddenly it's
Oh yeah.
we dismiss it.
Mhm.
Yeah, totally.
Oh yeah. I mean,
So
girl, sorry, fully. I'm like, one
no,
more thing. Imagínate tú, me sitting at GW, being a poli sci major. You're in
yeah,
DC, so like the professors were incredible. I was the only person in pretty much all of my classes that wasn't going to go into politics. And which I think also allowed me to, I don't know, enjoy my education a little bit more, because I was like, there wasn't this
yeah,
pressure of like, I'm going to be the president / I'm like, I took a campaigns class and I was the only person, we went around in a circle and everyone was like, what do you want to do with your life? And every single person other than me was like, I'm going to be like a campaign advisor. Like I will be chief of staff. I will be a campaign advisor. Like that's what I'm doing. And I was like, I would love to work in a magazine. Like would love it. And it was so interesting because whether or not people thought this about me, I internalized it as like,
mm,
you're a moron,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Anyway.
yeah. I struggled so much with that, like leaving college, and I think twofold, like not having studied acting and then deciding to do it afterward. And a lot of my friends were in corporate careers and, we're in our
Yeah.
early 20s and everyone's like, doing all these things. And a lot of my friends were in the business world and I'm I went to college in New York City, like in the financial district. So like literally it's like all business people. And that silliness of being like, oh, I'm an actor, like, you know, and not really knowing how to like stand in that, you know, stand in my worth and be like, yeah, this is what I'm doing and it's important. Um, and it took me a minute to like really feel that. But I feel like, yeah, that's so true and so relatable. Yeah, 100%. So how did you get from then you're in New York, you're working for these big, you know, like, I mean, the top of the top, right? Like you're working for these massive publications. How did you go from that to then transitioning into working on your own like channels through, you know, the podcast, Substack, all the things? And when did you make the transition from New York to LA?
So it's interesting. When I started at Condé, I remember taking that job. I had been interviewing for 2 positions at the same time. I was interviewing for a closet assistant
Mm-hmm.
at Vanity Fair,
Okay.
which is exactly what it sounds like. You're in a closet,
Yeah.
organizing clothes, which was all of my internships, by the way. And then the other one was the assistant to the editor-in-chief at Architectural Digest. And
Wow.
I never thought I would go into that, like design in that world. I didn't know anything about it. And I got both offers. And I was like,
That's right.
You're a moron if you don't take this job with this
Sure.
woman. Because I mean, she is, and that's a whole other conversation. Best boss ever. Incredible woman. Has
Awesome.
paved such an incredible path for women, whatever. Anyway, like I will talk about her forever.
Yeah.
But anyway, so once I got there, I think it became very apparent, at least in my own brain, that I was like, okay, once sort of my work here is done and I can like be a sponge and learn as much as I can from this remarkable person, like I will stay in the Condé Nast family until the day I die. But I'll go somewhere else. I'll go to Vogue. I'll go to Teen Vogue. I really wanted to make a difference and I really wanted to tell stories at a high level.
Yeah.
And I really had my sights set on being an editor-in-chief. Like that was the thing. But in those companies, like you get, like nobody leaves. Nobody leaves.
Yeah.
So it was like you either stay here forever and are just fighting, because it's one of those environments where it's like there is only one of you allowed there. So like people are closing that door behind them. So you're going to be here fighting for that job.
Sure.
Or you can have the option, which I started to realize later in my career, that I was like, oh, okay, sometimes people leave, they'll go somewhere else. They're not on their own, but they go somewhere else. They expedite this process and then they come back as an editor-in-chief.
Interesting.
We saw that happen. You know, Lindsay People-Wagner was a great example where she was at Teen Vogue, I believe. Yeah, she started at Teen Vogue, worked there, and then left and was at The Cut doing like really important work and killed it over there, and then came back, ran Teen Vogue as an editor-in-chief. Like there, I think she was the youngest Condé Nast I've ever had. And then now she's leading The Cut again. But anyway, she was like a great expander for me where I was like, oh, you can do that.
Sure.
And so anyway, fast forward, that was kind of the plan. Pandemic hits. I go back to Miami and we were working like crazy because during that time, Condé Nast was a fucking dumpster fire. And so we were working like crazy. Yeah. And during that time, I got an opportunity to write for a different publication, and it was through a mental health lens, which is something that was been really important to me. And I mentioned a little earlier, like I had done this thing called the Hoffman process when I was 22, and it like changed.
Yeah, I know about the Hoffman process. Yeah.
Okay, now people are like really talking about it, and it's wild because when both my parents had gone when I was little, and so I grew up with it as like a threat. Like I thought it was like the loony bin. Like it was literally used as like you're acting out, like we're sending you away type vibe. And I did it when I was 22, and then I moved to LA when I was like 25, 26. And I mean, everybody here goes. Everyone here has done it.
Yeah,
I'm like, people.
I recently discovered this, by the way. So yeah.
Okay. I'm like, I remember going the summer after I graduated college, and I like had missed a friend's birthday dinner, and like the conversation at the table was like Gaby cracked and her parents like sent her away somewhere. Like that was the vibe. Anyway, another story for another day. So I wrote about my time there for a different publication, and that like unlocked something in me where I was like so in flow writing that piece, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, this is what we need to be talking about right now. And also just the state of the world and everything that was going on. Like, we needed to be talking about our feelings and relating to each other just on a human level. So I started dipping my toe in the water. And I had already had the conversation with my old boss where I'd been like, she actually came to me and was like, you'd be really good on camera. And I was like, funny you say that because I would love to be. And so she started giving me these like little opportunities at AD to start, experimenting on camera, which is
Cool.
incredible because like a lot of bosses don't do that for their assistants.
Sure.
And so I started doing that. And then anyway, we're back in Miami. It's the pandemic. And I remember asking my boss, because I had to get everything approved through them because you're representing the brand, whatever. And I really wanted to do these interviews on IGTV when that was the thing.
Yep.
And so I started going live I put my profile on public, like I was on private ever until then.
Yeah.
I put my profile on public and I started doing these interviews, and it was a lot of like industry people, and it was just us talking about mental health and personal development and how they were doing. And we would go live, and then I would put it on IGTV, and that started it. And then from there,
this is on
I was
your
like,
personal
yes,
Instagram.
it was on my personal Instagram, and I'm still working at the magazine.
Yeah.
And so that starts getting some traction. And then I start realizing like, okay, I really want to do this. I don't know what this is, but I know that I want to have these conversations, and it's not going to happen at this company right now. Because I remember being in pitch meetings and like trying to really like force these ideas, and they were like, not going to happen here. Like, what are you trying to do? And I also just I think I saw too much behind the scenes where I was like, oh, this is not for me right now. And so I ended up resigning, which was like the most horrifying feeling in the entire world.
Oof,
horrifying
scary.
And then extremely liberating. But it's like you're leaving the company that you thought you would fucking die at. Like
Totally.
this was your dream forever. And I think that was one of the first like decisions that I really made where I was like, okay, this is about you. Like we're really going to do this. And then from there, I just immediately started freelancing for a ton of different publications and kind of experimenting, whether it was talking about beauty or culture or mainly, again, people. Like I love profiling people. And then from there, I started a podcast that was a mental health podcast that I had for 3 years with a friend of mine. And that was a wonderful time as well. And then we ended up closing that down like a year ago.
Yeah.
And that really came from a place of like, okay, I think we were both ready for our own things. But the idea of Irregardless and, being able to have a conversation series and interview show that was very much melding like the Oprah way, but also integrating, your own. I mean, no, she shows up as herself and she has her own sauce for sure. But it was kind of just like, okay, I really want to be having these conversations and I really want to do it my way. Yeah. And it's sort of like a now or never for me situation where once like an idea comes into my head, I can't unsee it. Like I'm either going to do something about it and it's not going to go anywhere, or like it will drive me insane. Yeah. So I was like, fuck it, we ball. Like we're just going to do it. And I shot my first season. I shot 6 episodes. It's like a capsule collection of episodes that came out. Yeah. I think we started shooting a year ago. Mm-hmm. And now we're gearing up for hopefully season 2 very soon. But we're talking, we're talking to the potential partners. I'm like, girl, this has been self-funded. So we are figuring out how to get creative here.
People don't understand. Like people do not get how much goes into a podcast. Like everyone thinks because everyone has a podcast that it's like, no big deal. Like it's so easy. It's so
it's a whole thing. But throughout that time, I guess I missed the part that I moved to LA. So the second that I decided to quit my job, I was like, I'm going to LA because I'd always wanted to come out here. Something about the city. I have 2 older half brothers from my dad's first marriage and like a whole different lore that are like 20, 30 years older than me. So I grew up coming out here because one of them went to school out here and then stayed.
Oh, okay.
So I grew up coming to LA all of the time. And there was just like something about it. Before I even like could clock that I wanted to be anything near entertainment, I was like, oh, I need to go here. And I really wanted to come here after school. But I was like, to do what? Like you want to work in a magazine, you have to be in New York. So I was like, okay, no, I'm leaving New York. Like no. Like I got to get out of there. And I moved out here in January of 2021. And then just threw myself into networking like a psychopath because every city is a who you know city, but this is like a who you know city. Sure. And I was like, I still feel like the new kid in a lot of spaces. Yeah. And so I was writing for publications, consulting for different either on editorial strategy or copywriting or whatever it may be. And then just networking like a maniac and doing a lot of moderating of panels and summits and movie screenings, and that's always super fun. Like I recently got to interview Becky G at Create and Cultivate, which was like iconic and so amazing. Thank you very much. But it's just been a ride. Yeah. So that's the journey.
Yeah. And I think like you've done I have so many questions for you, but I think you've just done like such a great job of utilizing like so many different avenues to like cohesively put out your image and what you're trying to accomplish. You know, I think
Thank
that
you.
like between the podcast, between your content, between the Substack, all the different parts of you, it does, for me at least, come really across as like this is what everything you're saying like makes a lot of sense to me based on like, but I love that you've been able to do it through like many different mediums and be able to like, okay, if you're a podcast person, here it is. If you like to read, here it is. If want to just scroll by, like here I am too. Like, and
Thank you.
it's really cool to watch you be able to use all these mediums and kind of package it as like who you are. And I think it's hard to do that.
I
And
appreciate that.
I want to, yeah, of course. And as we're talking about this, like I want to talk a little bit about like, for you, how do you feel like, your background coming from Miami, being a Cuban-American, all of that, like how has that really influenced or, affected the kind of content that you are putting out there, especially in like such like big spaces like Architectural Digest and like all these places like that? Like, how do you feel like you've been able to like kind of claim your voice, especially when I feel like a lot of these spaces don't make a lot of room for, Latino voices and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I think, prefacing, I think the situation that I had growing up was really unique in that I grew up in a house with a mom who always told my sister and I, you can do whatever you want. There's guardrails. But she's
Yeah,
like,
within reason. Yeah.
within reason here. She's like, and you're going to study this.
Yeah.
But like, but there's guardrails. But, she was very much like, do what's going to make you happy. She's like, do what's going to make you money, but do what's going to make you happy. And that I think is really, really rare, where I didn't grow up in like at least in terms of my career, it wasn't like a no environment. It was like a pursue it. Like she's been really supportive of all of this. Whether or not she understands it, she's been extremely supportive. And like that's super rare to find. Yeah. And so that's like caveat number one. Caveat number two is Miami is a very, very unique place. It is such an anomaly in the sense where left, right, center, everywhere you look, there is someone speaking to you in Spanish. Like everybody's Latino.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a really beautiful thing. I mean, there's so much context behind why that is safe there, or was. Out where it's a very different climate and environment. But, obviously, like you look at the history that Cubans have and, how they were able to get here, especially in the 60s when like a lot of our parents came and things like that. It's a very different situation, very different immigration situation that allowed them, this is not to take away from the unbelievable hard work that, like my mom, for example, like they've built everything from the ground up. Like that woman has done everything her fucking self. And I was just in this environment where I saw a lot of these like very successful Latinos around me. And so I didn't grow up with just such a privileged thing to think of like, I can't do something because I'm Latina. I'm also white Latina. So like, that also is something to take into consideration. And so I really grew up just not thinking about that I couldn't do something. And it wasn't until I started working at AD and like, not even AD, just like started working in that industry that I was like, oh, okay, like here's like we're going to tokenize it sort of situation, which they were like, but take the opportunity because like, who fucking cares? If you know what I mean? Like get yourself on camera, do the thing. They want a Latina. They want to say that they're checking off a box. Like run it, sister, use the opportunity,
Totally.
whatever. And then make sure, this is the thing too, is like, this is why mom's always taught me. She's like, get the opportunity, take the opportunity, open the door, and you better hold that fucking door open, stick your hand out and pull up everybody that you can with you. And that has been the guiding light. And I'm really lucky to have a lot of incredible female mentors and a lot of Latina mentors that have really instilled that in me of like this whole only one of us is allowed to be here, so we're not going to help anybody else is what keeps us stuck. Like they want you to do that. They want you to fight with each other. They want you to not make more space for one another so that you're not actually focused on the actual problem. You're just over here fighting with each other and you're ignoring the actual issue over here. So we're not going to do that. And on top of that too, like I really learned, especially through these female mentors, like nobody's going to take you seriously if you don't take yourself seriously. You have a lot of power in your voice, use it. And that's not to say that you walk into a room and like, put your fucking dick on the table and you're like, and what about it? Like, you don't have to be in that, you don't have to move in that way. Man or woman, you don't got to move that way. But it's knowing that you have value, that you have power, and that what you're doing is important. And there is somebody out there who is begging for you to do the thing, whether they know it or not. Like they're asking for something, for somebody to produce, to make, to whatever, to help them feel not so alone. And you could be that person to do that. And if you're able to do that for one person, in my book, that's worth it. I always think about Ava DuVernay, who is I call her like a virtual mentor because I don't know her.
Right. Yep. I have those too.
We follow each other on Instagram, which like freaks me out. I'm like, we've DM'd. She follows
Oh
me.
my
It's a
God,
big deal.
yes.
Oh no, I like shit my pants when that happens. Like I was like, thought I was hallucinating anyway, but we've never met in person. I'm like, yes, we are. But we've never met in person, but I have taken her masterclass and I, watch her interviews. And this is why I think like when people ask me a lot about mentorship and I'm like, you don't need to know them. Like you can have a virtual mentor. And something that I learned through her and through the way that she talks is she's always like, if your dream only includes you, it's not big enough. And I think about that all of the time, especially in these spaces, like you say that, weren't necessarily built for you. Fuck them.
Yeah.
Take up the space.
Yeah. And I feel like you're doing that. So, I mean, that's even how I found your podcast, was because I follow Natalie Linez and so I was like, oh, what is this new podcast? Like what? Like I've never heard. I'm pretty tapped into all the podcasts. Like I'm like, I love hearing stories, especially if it's like showcasing within, the entertainment industry. And so I was like, what is this podcast? And I like went down the deep dive and I was like, oh my God, like all of these people, it's all like Latinas and like women. And it was so cool to be able to like go down the rabbit hole and hear about all these stories.
Glad.
And I think and I think that's just like so much of that work, and like being able to take up that space and being like, you know what, I'm going to run with this, and like, and then create my own paths to be able to continue to bring other people up. And it's kind of like what we were talking about before, but like my whole thing of like in the beginning being like, oh, I don't know if like acting really makes a difference, but it's like, yes, like just being a Latina in that space is making a difference. Like even just being is making a difference.
Also, like, I just want to emphasize like what you just said is so important, because there are so many people that grow up where they don't think about how they're going to make a difference. And they're just like, I'm going to follow what makes me happy and what's fun and like, whatever. And I'm sure that there's been so many people who have pursued acting or have pursued content creation or whatever it may be through that lens. And like, 2 thumbs up for you, brother. Like, happy for you. But I just like something with Irregardless too is like, I just really want us to know that you're allowed to pursue whatever it is that you want to pursue. Do you know what I mean? And like your own spin and the way that you're going to help people is going to be ingrained in that because it's ingrained in you. But pursue what it is that you want to pursue.
Totally. Ugh. Yes. Emphasis on that. Like that is the key. 100%. Okay. So speaking of all of this, I want to kind of hear a little bit of like behind the scenes on your journey and what you do right now. And tell me a little bit about like, what is like this is going to be like, maybe a hard question, maybe not, but like, what is the hardest part of doing the work that you love? And I think part 2 to that question is, as being someone who is somewhat of a public figure, right? Like you're on social media, you have a Substack, you have your podcast. There's a lot of front facing, a lot of like room to be open to people being able to say whatever they want and all the things. And then also having to always be on. So how do you sort of like create the boundaries that you need to create around your privacy versus what you show, and also not letting it sort of like affect you how much you do have to like sort of share about yourself?
Yeah. So for the first half of that question, when it comes to the hardest parts that people don't see, I think, look, this is a me, myself, and I production, all of it, all of it. And so I think it could become really difficult. I think anybody who works, either works for themselves or even just works remote and doesn't get to interact with their team members every day could probably relate to working by yourself when all you have is your thoughts can become extremely draining and also extremely counterproductive. And I think that has been the biggest thing that I'm still learning how
Mm.
to grapple with, whether it's creating a working environment with friends twice a week where, it's an admin day. So let me like get out of the house and just go work with somebody else and like feel like we're coworkers. Or, for me, it's what's been really important has been curating a group almost like your board of directors of people that you really, really trust and value their opinion and have already sort of, I think lateral mentorship is extremely important. And also, the regular mentorship if we're like, they've kind of done the thing already. Having a nice balance of those types of people and keeping it small in what I'm about to say in terms of feedback. Because when you're working alone, you just get trapped in this silo in your own brain. And it can get really loud and it can get really distracting. And then you factor in other people's opinions and what they think you should be doing with your vision can also get really loud because when you don't have a manager or you don't have, your boss or the CEO of the company telling you like this is where you need to go, there's a lot of different paths in which you can take. And so I think for me where I get a lot of paralysis is like, is this the right path? Am I
Mm.
choosing the right one right now in this exact moment? And that has been one of the really difficult parts of it is trusting that I got it. And when I don't got it, trusting that I have surrounded myself with people who can help guide me and not listening to everybody when it comes to feedback has been really huge.
Yeah, that's hard.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's been a really difficult part of the whole thing is the being alone in your own thoughts and not being able to get the right sort of perspective all of the time. Um, and then for the second part of your question, in terms of boundaries, it's interesting, with the content creation side of what I do, I love YouTube, which is why Irregardless, like it's not even on podcast apps. It's only an interview show that exists on YouTube. And that was very intentional. And with my YouTube vlogs that I make, I'm really showing the behind the scenes of building this life, whether it's building my dream personal life or building my dream career and how both of those sort of marry themselves together. And that's a lot of what I share on the content creation part of it. And so for me, I've been really intentional with there's certain things that I'm just like not going to share. I'm a very open book. I'm like these bitches on YouTube, like they know my cycle. Okay. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, drop of blood. You heard about it.
Yeah.
Like they know what's going on. And I'm like, and you don't need to know certain things. Like, I'm in a relationship. I share my boyfriend. I mean, now he doesn't even use Instagram right now, but like I never tagged him. I never, I'll show his face and I'm fine with that type of stuff, but I'm not like dragging him into my videos. Like I think with my vlogs specifically, and there's no like shade around whoever does
No,
that. I think
no.
whatever works for you, works for you. But I think for me, if I really want to make this a long-term thing, I think about what is going to give me longevity and it's having peace of mind. And for me, I don't like showing me out to dinner with my friends or me on a date. Like if I'm showing that, it's a video that you're not going to hear the sound. I'm not like vlogging, being like, hey guys, so right now we're doing this, this, and this. It's like I took a video of where we were at and I overlaid it with music, if that, But I'm not going to bring you into family dynamics. I'm not going to bring you into moments with other people, but I will talk about stuff. Like I'll talk about if there was a really interesting conversation that we had that night, or my boyfriend and I worked through XYZ thing and now I'm comfortable sharing. Like I'll share those
Yeah, yeah,
things
yeah, sure.
later. But I think that's sort of the boundary that I have, especially because I am so open about so many things. And I'm like, okay, I think that's the thing, especially thinking ahead. I really want a family. I really want kids. I want to get married. Not right now. But you know, I think about that and I'm like, I don't want to sort of set myself up for failure in the sense of like, you know, building an audience of people who are so used to being up your fucking ass that all of a sudden when you take them out of there, they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, I want to set the precedent now. And that's the mentality I approach it with.
I think that's so good. And it's so, I asked that because I think like I've heard, you know, on other content creators talk about it too. And I think that that's a really important thing to think about if you do go into any sort of like content creation or any sort of like front facing thing, because I feel like when you don't create those boundaries that like I think it starts to like, I mean, anytime you don't create boundaries in any situation, you start to build your own resentments. It starts to affect you and your own mental
Yeah.
health. And it's like, if you're not clear on like, okay, this is the type of stuff I want to share and this is the type of stuff I don't want to share, then it starts to get blurred. And then like down the road, like you just said, it's like, how do you then backtrack when
Right.
people are used to you being like,
Right.
here's my boyfriend, we broke up.
Yes.
Okay, now this is the new boyfriend. And it's like, you know, and it's like, again, like you said, like no shade to anyone who's doing that. It's just a matter of like whoever it is and whatever, you know, it's such an individualistic choice. But I think
Yes.
it's an important one to think about because I feel like the lines can get pretty blurred.
It gets
You know?
blurry. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think, you know, there's two women in that content creation space that I think slay it. Tefi Pessoa, who's a good friend, she's taught me this
Love
from the
her.
beginning too.
Yeah.
Like her
Yeah.
and I've had this conversation.
Yeah.
Tefi's a really good example, and so is Cami Crawford, who is also
Yeah.
a fucking bad bitch. And
Yeah.
those two women, like Cami just got engaged, and we had never seen that man's face. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
She like cut him out of every photo. And now she said it. She was like, once I get engaged, you'll see his face. Like once this is locked in, you'll see his face. But they're two people that put so much of themselves onto the internet and give us as their audience so much.
Yeah.
But we still don't really know what's going on.
100%.
And that I think is really beautiful and healthy and smart because the way, even though how you asked the question, like people are going to insert their opinion into everything that you're posting.
Yeah.
So if you are posting your most intimate moments, you have to be prepared for that. Whether it's right or wrong, it's going to happen. I also think, I don't know. I learned this actually through a friend of mine and a guest that we had on my old podcast. His name is Jesse Israel. And he talks a lot about the idea of sharing from a scar, not sharing from a wound. And that stuck in my brain. And so I think about that.
Good.
All of the time, because how many times have you been going through something and you want to word vomit? Or let's say you call your sister, you call your mom, you call your friend, you tell them everything in the moment when you are like livid.
Yeah.
And then 45 minutes later, you're like, I actually don't feel that way anymore. Or a week later, or a month later, you feel differently about it. And now they know that information and like, they're not going to get over it the same way that you are. And so I think about that where we're all allowed to change our minds.
Yep.
But changing your mind in public is a lot more difficult than changing your mind in private because there's these parasocial relationships and the standard that people hold you to and da-da-da-da. And so I think allowing myself to not preemptively word vomit is really important. Like the whole oversharing to bond.
Yeah.
No, that was Gaby in her early 20s. Like when she so desperately like wanted to connect with people about whatever it was. Now I'm like, no.
Yeah.
You don't get access to me in that way. And it's not in an offensive way. It's just, we need to treat our energy like the very important, valuable commodity that it is.
Yeah. Not everyone needs to know everything.
Yeah. Sharing from a scar, not a wound. That was a really good reframe for me. I love
that. I'm going to use that. That's so, so, so good. Like, I love that. So I want to start to wrap up, but I want to hear a little bit about like, just how are you defining success right now? And how do you feel like that's connecting to your overall like brand, your legacy, what you're building? And I know like you mentioned a little bit about like being a forever student, and I would love to like hear about like, okay, what are you learning, and what are in conjunction with like how you're defining success, just like what are you learning about yourself or your craft or the world around you right now that feels like it's shaping you?
a big question.
Yeah, I
A
know.
big
I know.
question.
Sorry,
A good
I
question.
wrapped
No,
it
it's a
up
good
in
question.
a big way.
I love that. No. It's the way you got to do it. I think it's interesting. I think about success in different buckets. I think about personal success, career success, all that sort of stuff. And I would love, if I'm being really honest, for the day to come where they all live in a bit more harmony. But if I'm being honest about where I'm at right now, I think I feel a little bit more segmented than I
Okay.
would like
Yeah.
to, in that sense, if that makes sense. And so I think for me in my personal life, the way that I've, define that success is, how am I showing up for myself? How am I taking care of my health? How am I taking care and showing up for the people that I love?
Yeah.
Nurturing those relationships and, nurturing my inner child and being able to play and explore and just be good up top,
Yeah.
honestly, and be able to show up for those other people in my life too that I love. And that was a really difficult place for me to get to for a long time. And, going back to my time at Hoffman, that was what actually allowed me to have the breakthrough to wake up every morning to be like, oh, this bitch dope as fuck. Like, I love her. And I'm so grateful that that hasn't wavered. And it's taken a lot of work. That's not to say that I don't have a lot of doubt and a lot of insecurities that come up, especially when I'm doing new things and in my capabilities and all that sort of stuff. But I'm happy that the insecurities that show up have way more to do with like my career and that bucket than with who I am as a human.
Yes.
And I fuck with who I am as a human. And I know I'm a
Yeah.
good person. And I know I show up that way. So that I think is really how I'm defining that sort of success.
Yeah.
And in my career, I think it's really just a function of, was I able to help at least one person feel like they could actually do what it is that they want to do and not feel so alone while doing it?
Oh, I
That's really
fucking
what
love
it is.
that.
And just be able to not feel, I think I grew up feeling, this sounds very like tiny violin, but I think I grew up feeling really misunderstood in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
where I was just like, why are people not, like, why is this not clicking? And then it was like, okay, maybe your actions aren't aligning with like what's going on internally, and like that has something to do with it, and we can take accountability around that. But I think it also was just, the way that the world perceives young women and women that want to do certain things with their lives. And I don't know, I just felt really, really, really misunderstood growing up. And I hated that feeling.
Yeah.
And it makes me really sad when other people feel that way.
Yeah.
And so that's part of it, of like this not feeling alone in it all, is just to understand that while we're all living our own unique paths and our own unique journeys, there is so much of it that is so just human that
Yeah.
we all go through in different ranges, capacities, whatever. And so that is, I just really hope that, especially with women, with young women, like it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be
Yeah.
fine.
Yes.
And I really want to, that has to do with my career, because that's all of the storytelling that I love to do, and, sharing people's stories to help people identify and create more empathy and all that sort of stuff. And also just like have fun, because at the end of the day too,
Yes.
like all of this is important, but like to what I was saying to you earlier about like, you're allowed to, even if you were just like, I want to act because it's fun, like do it. And so with the conversations that I'm having, it's like, yeah, we can go there and I can meet you there and we can have this very honest conversation. But even like the conversation and the tone of this hasn't been depressing as fuck. Like we're having fun, we're laughing, like it's a good time. Like that's what I hope to bring to the table, is understanding that like both of these things can exist at the same time. We can be talking about something really important and necessary and, often heavy. And then we can meet it with lightness and laughing and shooting the shit and talking about stupid idiots that we used to date. Like that is fun and that is entertaining. And being able to marry that is just like so fun and important for me. And then what was the last part of your question? I'm sorry,
last part,
I rambled.
No, you didn't. You maybe even answered like the last part of this, but like just the idea of like being that forever student and like what you feel like you're learning right now about yourself, your craft, the world, like all the things. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, got it. One last thing I'll say about the success of the career thing.
Yeah.
I really think a lot about legacy. And I think, one of the things that I'm just really grateful for is that legacy, like, obviously in the big picture, but within your family. And I think one of the most amazing privileges that my mom gave my sister and I was the privilege of having options. And
that's good. Yeah.
I really want to be able to do that for my future kids.
Yeah.
And to just provide them with the safety, emotional safety, with the financial safety, to just be like, explore what you want to explore and run it. And that
Totally.
is like something I think a lot about too, is like, okay, how am I going to create this legacy and
Of freedom.
that can span this freedom for generations to come within my family? I think about that a lot.
Yeah.
And what am I learning about myself? Okay, yeah, forever student. I always talk about that because I'm like, I mentioned masterclass. Like, I'm a big masterclass bitch. I love reading. I love, personal development, but I also love, look, I decided to become self-employed at 24 years old. I have a lot to learn. We always have a lot to learn, but like, a lot to learn about leadership, to learn about how to, take care of my finances and be extremely financially literate, because like I didn't know any of that at all. We're not taught it in school.
Nope. Hardly ever.
So like in that way, I'm always trying to learn more and learn from people smarter than me and who have lived more than I've lived. But I think in terms of like what I'm currently learning about myself is just the freedom that comes from just honestly moving in alignment with who you are. I think that can sound very like up here, and you're like, what does that actually mean in practice? Because, when people are like, I'm authentically me. They're like, no shit. Who else are you going to be? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But, when you are front facing and, like being an actor and also having your podcast, like sometimes you feel like you need to perform.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to put that on you, but like, I know that I do, where I feel like I need to perform for whoever I'm interviewing or for the audience
for sure.
or for whatever. And obviously there's a level of decorum and professionalism and all this sort of stuff. But I really have found that the best work comes from when you are just
yourself,
being yourself,
Yeah.
And so just using my voice in the way that it is naturally coming out of me.
Yeah. Ugh. I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing all of these. There's so many nuggets in here, and I'm so grateful that I got to learn about you, learn about your journey, and, get to hear a little bit more about all of the things that you're doing. So I can't wait to continue following along and hopefully seeing season 2 of Irregardless.
Yes.
And
I'm like, everyone pray.
Yeah,
it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
No, it's gonna happen. I already know. I feel it. It's happening.
Thank you, girl.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much, Gaby. This was really wonderful.
Thank you so much. Your questions were so thoughtful. You're such a good interviewer. I appreciate it.
Thank you.